Although we all could see the Donald Trump-Elon Musk civil war from miles away, I don't think any of us could have expected that it would be this bad. It was a bit surprising, but not the only surprise to come out of Donald Trump's White House lately, because we just saw two shocking legal decisions that are rocking the Trump White House and leading to some insane posting from not just Trump, but his crazed press secretary in Carolyn Leavitt. We're going to get into it all and how it affects Donald Trump. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, these two legal decisions have to do with one, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and the second with Donald Trump and Carolyn Leavitt's attack on the Associated Press. But before we can get into them, I want to hear from Ari Melber, who broke down the return that we will see from Abrego Garcia in a shocking case right here.
Major development in the Supreme Court's clash with the Trump administration about the rule of law. They've had a lot of different ways that Trump officials have tried to test or sneak or maybe defy rulings at the lower court level. Supreme Court, of course, is the final word, and tonight we can report that is still the case in America. There was about 2 months of delay, but the Trump administration is now formally complying with the Supreme Court order to facilitate the return, that is, to bring back to America a man that they admitted they mistakenly deported, Abrego Garcia. He returns today from this El Salvador prison, and he will face new federal criminal charges. Garcia is named now in a new indictment that says he was transporting people not legally allowed to be in the country, and the Trump administration, which is now backing off claims that some of its officials made, including the attorney general, that they didn't maybe have to comply or they couldn't comply or they weren't going to do anything. They are now trying on messaging to go on offense and present evidence against the detainee.
Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring. They found this was his full-time job, not a contractor.
Now, that's actually how it is supposed to work. If the government has evidence against an individual, whether they're an undocumented immigrant or an American citizen, they present that evidence in court. Of course, we can follow that case to find out over time whether they win or lose those charges. That's how it's supposed to work, by the way. Now, they'd made this mistake in deportation, but what super boosted this all the way up to the Supreme Court was a suggestion that maybe the Trump administration wouldn't follow judicial orders. That was a big deal. And so the Trump administration, remember, lost in April at the Supreme Court level when the judges ordered the facilitation of Garcia's return. Now, that left some wiggle room, including some time, which you could argue is logical. The Supreme Court didn't say we have all the facts to know that he should be returned within 48 hours. They said facilitate his return. And initially, Trump officials made it sound like they weren't going to follow that at all. But there has been a backlash. There have been other court losses. There's been public criticism. And so, while we don't have the reporting to know whether the president and all his aides knew from day one they were always going to yield, or whether it was some of the public pressure that did it, what we're seeing here and what matters in the rule of law is that while this is what's supposed to happen, no one's talking about a celebration or a parade, it is also what some Trump officials brazenly threatened would not happen. They claimed today wouldn't come, that they might leave this open and test whether they could fully defy this order forever, and that didn't happen. Tonight, after some pressure, they are following exactly what the Supreme Court said, which was facilitate the return of this individual.
Ari Melber mentioned it, but I want to reinforce the point that the public pressure campaign might have been the most important thing that happened in returning Abrego Garcia and ensuring that he gets the due process that he deserves. It was us. It was our agency. It was our voices. Sure, Donald Trump was probably not going to not respond to a Supreme Court ruling, but who knows? He might have. If it was too quiet, if the Democrats who wanted us to shut up about this were in charge and they made sure that none of us spoke out, I don't know, maybe Donald Trump would have defied the Supreme Court. But no, we stepped up and we spoke back and we spoke up, and we are going to have to do that again after a shocking legal decision, which is not yet final, but regarding Donald Trump's attack on the Associated Press, this second shocking legal decision that Carolyn Leavitt and Donald Trump were gloat posting about. I want to see what they said, and then we're going to talk about it. Trump takes victory lap after court rules he can ban AP, which he says won't stop lying about the Gulf of America. Donald Trump celebrated a legal victory over the Associated Press on Friday night, claiming the outlet refused to state the facts or the truth about the Gulf of America. Trump renamed the Gulf on his first day in office. He banned the wire service from the Oval Office after it refused to update its guidelines to adhere to the designation of the international body of water. In a Truth Social post on his platform, he wrote, "Big win over AP today. They refused to state the facts of the truth of the Gulf of America. Fake news." Carolyn Leavitt, unfortunately, also chimed in, saying, "Victory. As we've said all along, the Associated Press is not guaranteed special access to cover President Trump in the Oval Office, aboard Air Force One, and in other sensitive locations. Thousands of other journalists have never been afforded the opportunity to cover the president in these privileged spaces. Moving forward, we will continue to expand access to new media so that more people can cover the most transparent American president in history rather than the failing legacy media. And by the way, AP, it's still the Gulf of America." So we've had a lot of fun news in the past 48 hours with this civil war. I unfortunately had to bring a little bit of disappointing news because I wanted to talk about this. Number one, it is not the Gulf of America. It is the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not changing the preferred pronouns of Donald Trump's body of water and letting him claim that as a victory. Second, this is still ongoing. The AP will continue to fight back. And much like the case with Abrego Garcia, it will require our voices speaking out to make sure Donald Trump cannot continue to attack journalists and try to make us scared. New media is taking over, and we have to fight back and use our voices. And that was why I was so excited to talk to Congressman Jamie Raskin, who is helping us do just that, and of course doing it himself. And I hope you stick around for that whole interview because we broke down a lot, including some breaking news. Let's take a look. Congressman Raskin, thank you so much for joining me. The last time we talked, we were pontificating. We were thinking about if Elon's involvement with Donald Trump following that devastating loss in Wisconsin would play out in a way that was pretty unfavorable to him. And I think it has. This civil war has exploded over the past couple of days. And there are so many questions that I could ask you, but I just really want to ask, what do you think? There's so much to ask. I want to put a quarter in the machine and just let you go.
Well, in the gangster state, it's every man for himself. So they've had their breakup, and now they're letting it all hang out. Of course, they're accusing each other of crimes that both of them should have reported long ago as the president of the United States and as a public official. I have found myself agreeing sometimes with them. I mean, Elon Musk says that Donald Trump should be impeached, and Donald Trump says that these billions of dollars in federal contracts Musk has gotten should be investigated. And I agree with both of them. I think we should listen to both of these guys. But look, the serious matter here is the public interest, which is at stake in their horrific tax break bill for billionaires. 14 million people could lose their Medicaid. Millions of people lose their access to SNAP benefits and nutrition. And then meantime, it's going to drive the country into another $3 trillion of a ditch in terms of debt. In terms of the political tectonics of it, there's movement of the MAGA wing of the Trump coalition away from the libertarian billionaire Silicon Valley techno bros who insist that democracy is defunct in America, and they're going to replace it with a right-wing techno state where the U.S. will absorb Canada and Greenland and Panama and all these other countries, and it will be like in Orwell's 1984, where China gets Asia and Russia gets Europe, and then we be the third power. So to the extent that it marks the decline of that vision, that's all to the good. But at the same time, there are people who are appreciating the fact that Elon Musk, who seemed to have taken a red pill and become mega woke, is now waking up out of his stupor and saying, my God, how did I go down a road where I denied that Joe Biden won the 2020 election, which he won by 7 million votes? How did I get in a situation where he's essentially on the side of the January 6th insurrection, or claiming that the FBI created the insurrection or Antifa did it? How did this guy whose entire career has been around science and technology end up on the side denying vaccines, or saying that vaccines are some kind of George Soros plot against the world? So to the extent that he's woken up from his red pill wokeness, well, that might be a good thing for the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Elon tries to frame himself in a hero in his new revelations against Trump, saying that, oh, he was in the Epstein files, that's why they wouldn't release them. And so it was like, so you knew this maybe even before Trump was elected. Now you're sharing it because it's politically convenient for you. They're just revealing the worst elements, not only in themselves and each other, really, which is just such a beautiful thing to watch. But just because Donald Trump may have broken up with Elon, we'll see how this plays out. It doesn't mean he's done, giving out money to anyone willing to support him. You've been talking a lot recently about the Ashley Babbitt settlement. For those not familiar with what Donald Trump's government just did, can you break down a little bit more how this all ties into the gangster state as you've so perfectly described it?
Well, look, the larger picture is that his very first act in office was to pardon 1,500 violent insurrectionists and rioters who beat the daylights out of our cops, brutalizing, wounding, injuring, disfiguring, disabling hundreds of police officers. That's an extraordinary thing. And I'll give you a little bit of a scoop, Jack, but it occurred to me that these pardons, both of them and then all of the white collar defendants, are costing America a lot of money, because he's relieving them of their fines. He doesn't have to do that. Yeah. In fact, most pardons traditionally have come after a person has satisfied restitution of their victims and repaying the government. But he's absolving all of these people of the money they owe. So the January 6th defendants owed more than $3 million to the Metropolitan Police Department, the Capitol Police, different people were victimized, and he just freed them of that. So at the same time that he's relieving them of that debt, and he's actually going to court to say those who did the right thing by starting to repay their debt should get that money back, which is an extraordinary thing. Meantime, he wants to give $5 million to the family of Ashley Babbitt, who tragically was killed after she tried to enter into the speaker's lobby surrounding the House chamber. And the handful of officers who were there were facing this mob and warned them to get back, but she started to go through one of the windows and she was shot and she was killed. There was a police investigation which found that it was a justified shooting. It ended up turning the mob around, and then they left instead of storming the House chamber where the members still were. And of course, there were people talking about assassinating Nancy Pelosi and, hanging Mike Pence and so on. But it's been looked at many times. There were never any charges brought. And even Speaker McCarthy said that the police officer did his job. But somehow, just like Donald Trump began calling the January 6th violent insurrectionists hostages and calling them political prisoners, they've decided that she was a martyr for the cause, and has arranged to give her family $5 million. Meantime, we've got police officers who had heart attacks and strokes, who had broken arms, legs, lost fingers, you name it. Several, like Sergeant Goodell, have been forced to leave police work and are supporting themselves on a fraction of what their original government salary was. These people have gotten nothing. They're doing nothing for the cops.
They won't put up a plaque for the cops. They won't put up a plaque.
The plaque. Yeah, they say they back the blue, but they just back the coup. If the police officers get in the way of Donald Trump's mad authoritarian rush for power, then the police are just brushed aside. So we voted to put up a plaque in honor of the officers. This was back, it was signed into law on March 15th, 2022. It was signed into law, and 1 year later, it was supposed to be put up. March 15th, 2023, it was supposed to be put up. No, Speaker Johnson has not put it up. He's refused to put it up. We've been turning up the heat on this. And if you come to my office in the Rayburn building, you will see a poster, which is a replica of the plaque that we've put up. And we're going to get posters to everybody, all the Democrats and the couple dozen Republicans who voted for that plaque. Most of them voted against it, of course, because they don't back cops when the cops get in the way of a mega riot and insurrection.
Mm-hmm. And the posters kind of remind me of a different call out. You had a little bit adjacent to this of the Republicans calling for impeachment and attacks on all these judges standing in the way of Donald Trump's very public criminality. And I think the public element of this maybe is the most important in unpacking Donald Trump's ultimate goal here. I talked with Senator Murphy about this with Donald Trump's crypto corruption, how he wants to do it as publicly as possible because he thinks if he does so, and the mainstream media has largely let him get away with it, that it'll be brushed off as business as usual. If Donald Trump is so blatantly and grossly attacking judges and the judiciary, then he can get away with it. That public is so part of it, except for one thing, which is the list of the attendees who attended his crypto dinner. Of course, we got a couple of shots of like the bad steak and lobster that they were served. Not a shock that the catering at a Donald Trump event wasn't top notch, but you sent a letter to the White House demanding that list of names be released. How else can we hold Trump accountable for what I am losing my mind over? Because it is the most blatant corruption we've ever seen in the history of the presidency. And now he's tweeting about it as like this marker of his success. It is insanity.
I mean, if you rob a bank in broad daylight with everybody to see, you're still robbing the bank. Blatant corruption is still blatant, is still corruption. Blatant crime is still crime. But they think that if, we engaged in 50 criminal acts on a day and you weren't able to stop us, that was transparent and therefore. But your point is the essential one here, which is they had more than 220 of their crypto donors show up, but on a totally anonymous basis, except for, I guess, Justin Sun, who had been subject to multiple SEC charges and investigations for crypto fraud. But what do you know? He became, I think, a $75 million investor in World Liberty Financial, which is the Trump family's own crypto venture now. And then all the charges were dropped against him. Trump's SEC, which he asserts unilateral control over because he said he believes in the unitary executive theory that the president controls independent boards and agencies. So Trump's SEC has dropped 13 different investigations and sets of charges against crypto fraudsters. And they've just thrown themselves completely into it. They're making literally billions of dollars, the Trump family. Donald Trump and the Trump family are making billions of dollars as they drop charges against all these fraudsters. So who was at that dinner? Were there foreign states at that dinner? Were there other crypto criminals seeking pardons or the withdrawal of SEC charges against them or other criminal charges against them? Who else was trying to curry favor with Donald Trump and showed up on this anonymous basis and turned over, I think the average ticket went for something like 1.7 million or 1.8 million dollars. I mean, you're limited to give to a presidential campaign $2,700. But now they're saying you can just put $1.8 million in the president's pocket for his worthless meme coin. So the whole crypto loophole here has obviously devoured the rule. The crypto loophole is like the Trump Hotel in the first administration on steroids. I mean, the Chinese government bought, I think it was 2 or 3 dozen hotel rooms for 2 weeks at the Trump Hotel and never used them. Well, that was just a way to write a check to Donald Trump in order to get certain favors out of Donald Trump and to curry favor with him. And, he's obviously a very impressionable guy when it comes to money. You give him some money and you get what you want. And we're seeing that now with the pardons generally. It's a total pay-to-play situation, right? There's this one guy who was running a nursing home, Walchek, and he was stealing from his own employees. So he was deducting money for Social Security and Medicare taxes, unemployment, and so on. But he was just pocketing it, and he bought a $2 million yacht, and he was buying other stuff. Well, he got found out. He got prosecuted and wrote a pardon petition to Donald Trump. There was no action on it until his mother went to a Donald Trump fundraiser for $1 million ahead. And what do you know? 2 weeks later, that complete unconditional pardon comes through. Not only does the guy not have to go to jail for 18 months, he doesn't have to pay restitution to his victims. So the workers he ripped off, he was supposed to pay them back $4.4 million. Trump just absolved him of that. And I started thinking about it. Gee, I wonder how many other people were in that same situation. We've counted now more than $2 billion in restitution payments and fines that he has saved for these people. So they invest on the Trump side, the MAGA side, and then they don't have to pay their victims back. That is a gangster state.
Everywhere you look, it's the bottom up wealth transition. It is disgusting throughout this administration, especially how quickly, publicly, and grossly it has happened. But I want to end on a bit of positive news. You are working on currently some of the best legislation that I've seen out of this session. Can you talk about the BARC Act and the work that you're doing right now with animals across the country?
And then the BARC Act, I will tell you, is totally bipartisan. I've got Republican Representative Young Kim from California, and we've got Senator Tillis and Senator Warnock, Republican Democrats in the Senate side. And we're picking up huge support. Actually, it's a very simple thing, but simple things go a long way these days, as you say, Jack. And basically, it allows for pet supply companies and dog food and cat food stores to give surplus product to animal shelters, which are overrun right now with animals. And they don't have to worry about liability. If the shelters don't want them, they don't have to take them. But if, it's 1 day or 2 days or 3 days past the sell date for the kibble or whatever, they can accept it. And that will prevent us from wasting millions of pounds of pet food and allow that to go to the shelters, which are very hard up these days. I kicked it off with my friends at the Montgomery County Humane Society. We're very excited about it. And, everybody should be donating whatever you can to help out. It's always moving to me that, when there's a hurricane or something, that our rescue people and families will go back to find the dogs and the cats. And so maybe if we can get that done, maybe we could start saving some human beings, like the 14 million people in this wretched bill, which Elon Musk called a disgusting abomination, who are about to be thrown off of their Medicaid health care, as well as off of their SNAP benefits for food.
Yeah, you would hope that it's not going to take until Democrats retake the Congress for us to start getting stuff done, but you're clearly making things happen, even in spite of the MAGA majority. Congressman Raskin, always so great to talk to you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Jack.